Shout out to a true legend, Derrick Rose. He called it a career yesterday. And if you're a Chicago Bulls fan, if you're a basketball fan in general, you absolutely love Derrick Rose. He is the most humble superstar I've ever seen. You never hear him go on podcasts and play the what if game or talk about how much of a problem he was or what he would have done if certain things would have happened. There's a lot of ex NBA players these days. They go on podcasts, they just sound bitter, they just sound delusional with their takes and what they think they could have been and what they think should have happened in their career. We're never going to see that from Derrick Rose. Derrick Rose stays to himself. He's truly humble. It's one of the reasons that he was so easy to build a team around with the Chicago Bulls, is because his teammates loved him, because he was never trying to up himself. He was just trying to up others. And we really don't see superstars like that come around very often. So shout out to Derrick Rose, man. He does have the saddest career in NBA history. And yeah, I'm biased. I'm a Chicago Bulls fan. But man, you really think about how much different the NBA would have been if he would have never had his injuries. And not just the ACL. You got to remember, he tore his meniscus right after because that knee was overcompensating for the torn ACL. And then the year after that, he tore his other meniscus. And he was never able to get right after that. And he was able to adjust his game. I will never forget watching that 50-point game with the Timberwolves. It's probably a top 3 favorite basketball moment of mine, is just watching that. And I'm texting friends, I'm texting everybody like, yo, you guys got to watch this. Derrick Rose is going off. It's one of my favorite basketball memories of all time. So it's cool that he was able to kind of rebound his game and change his game and still be a contributing player on an NBA level and still have a comeback. But man, peak Derrick Rose, you just look at these highlights from his MVP year, and the NBA just would have been totally different if Derrick Rose had never got hurt. I don't think that the Warriors would have ascended. I don't think Steph Curry would have ascended in the same way. Granted, they would have got a championship. Steph Curry still would have went down as one of the greatest players of all time, but Derrick Rose would have been the best point guard in the NBA for a good 5 to 8 year stretch. Nobody could do anything with him. He was just a freak of nature. Russell Westbrook is a freak of nature. Derrick Rose was faster than Russ. He could jump higher than Russ. He could beat you off the dribble better than Russ. He was quicker. Derrick Rose was everything Russell Westbrook is, but on steroids. And people forget because it's, 12 years ago now, but he was really the scariest player in the NBA. There's a lot of revisionist history when it comes to Derrick Rose. Drives me crazy when people say, people go back and they look at the fact that the Heat won the championship that year, and they look at, LeBron's stats that year, and they say he actually should have won MVP. I promise you, that season, there wasn't a single soul. I think he got like 4 first-place MVP votes, and Derrick Rose got like 110, 111, something like that. Like, it wasn't even a debate. Everybody knew by about March that Derrick Rose had that MVP locked up. So it's tragic what happened to him, because people have already forgotten how big of a problem he is. And you're seeing people, dumbasses online being like, he doesn't even deserve to have his number retired, doesn't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame or whatever. And that's if you view basketball as what the career was in total rather than what the peak was. If you view it what the peak was, he's one of the greatest players we've ever seen. If you view him, the way that we view guys like Penny Hardaway or Tracy McGrady or Grant Hill, we don't talk about longevity with them. We talk about what their peaks were and how amazing they were at their peak. That's the same thing you got to do with Derrick Rose, man. At his peak, he was the most unstoppable player in the NBA. He was the guy defenders feared the most at his peak. That MVP year, nobody wanted to play against him. Everybody was avoiding him. He was an unstoppable force of nature. So I think, if he doesn't get hurt, I think the Bulls win the title that year, that lockout year. I think they were better than the Heat, and I think Derrick Rose was obviously a huge part of that. I think they would have beat the Heat in the playoffs that year. They would have crushed the Thunder in that finals. We would have got Westbrook versus Rose, Westbrook versus KD. There would have been a lot of interesting storylines drawn from that, but just the NBA is totally different if Derrick Rose doesn't get hurt. We don't see Steph Curry get that best point guard in the NBA title. He would have never been better than Derrick Rose at Derrick Rose's peak. And we would have seen, the way teams build their teams, it would have changed because they would have had to deal with Derrick Rose. There might not have been as much of an emphasis on three-point shooting because Steph Curry got to ascend as the best point guard in the NBA. He got to change the way the game is played. If Derrick Rose is just wreaking havoc on the NBA, maybe we don't see the three-point shooting and the stretch four explosion and everything like that take off in the same way, because teams would have been building to try to stop the most athletic point guard in the NBA. So shout out to Derrick Rose, man. Hell of a career. My third favorite Bull of all time. Joakim's going to be number 1, and I default got to have MJ number 2, but I love Derrick Rose.